What's going on, guys? This is Mr. DEBT Joe Lorick from the Money Etiquette Group, and I want to answer an important question that's been coming in my DMs and inboxes in reference to student loan debt. A lot of people are asking me about the student loan debt bubble. If it bursts, will it cause a recession? How are people going to be able to afford to pay back their student loans if the economy goes down? If we just hit our normal scheduled recession, what's going to happen with that market? Is it going to cause everything to just blow up? Is this going to be worse than the housing market? I get this question on a regular basis, and I have to tell you that it's not quite. People have to remember that federal student loans, not the private ones, but federal student loans are not quite tied into your life the same way a mortgage is. Remember, a mortgage, you can walk away from a mortgage. Okay, you can file bankruptcy, you can just walk away from it and just keep it moving. After a certain amount of years, you can get another mortgage. You know, that's something that can be done. But student loans don't go away. Okay, the federal government is saying that I'm going to get this money over your lifetime, whether it be the short time period or the long term period. I'm going to get this money. Now, what happens when even over a lifetime, a lot of people can't pay back their debts? They can't pay back their student loan debts. What does the federal government do? Now, of course, we know if you default right now, they can garnish your wages without even getting a court order. They can garnish your wages up to 15%. They could take some of your Social Security income, medical benefits away from you. They can do a lot right now without a court order. And if they get a court order through litigation, they can do even more. But even with all that being in place today, if you were in a desperate situation, okay, if the economy gets really bad and a lot of people are desperate and they want to pay back their debts and they want to be able to get loans and they still want to be able to function, you have to ask, what is the government going to do to help those people? Or what are they going to do to enable people to pay back their debts? Now, they're not going to be able to create a whole bunch of jobs, okay, out of thin air to just get people more money. And sometimes, I mean, you only have a certain many hours in a day. So even if you're working your 40-hour-a-week job, unless that other job is paying significantly more, how are you going to do both? I mean, you're going to have to work 80 hours a week. You know, you're going to have to work yourself to death. And certainly the government doesn't want to necessarily see that either, because then you can't function in society. Then we have more crime. It's just not as good for a functional society if everyone's working 80 hours a week. So how does it get addressed? Well, think about it from this aspect, okay? If you could, how do you force someone to do something for you without it seeming like you're forcing someone to do something for you? Very simple. You put them in a desperate situation and you hand them an olive branch as if you're helping them, but ultimately you wanted them to act in that way anyway. Similar to like some mafia type stuff. Okay, if someone works for you, they have to pay you a certain amount of money, right? And then you send robbers in to rob them, and then they can't pay you back that money. Well, oftentimes that means you need to renegotiate the original deal. And because of that, you can kind of squeeze them to do more of what you want. Okay, so now instead of you just paying me money, now you work for me. The government could do the same thing. Okay, the federal government won't say you have to be a slave or be our slave or worker to pay off your student loan debt. However, they could implement a program, okay, a program which says if you work a certain amount of hours for the federal government, in addition to working your normal job, then we'll directly use those funds earned towards paying off your student loan debt. So you wouldn't get a paycheck, you get a receipt that says that your debt has been reduced by this because of you working. So think about it, in a desperate situation where if I can't get access to jobs, I can't get access to credit, I can't function in an environment which you need so much credit just to function. I need help. I need to know a way out so that I'm able to get those resources again so I can make money. One way that the government could say, okay, we're going to provide you with a resource is to say, we'll put you in this program in which you can work on weekends. You can put in 15 hours a week and you still could have your 9 to 5. You still can work your job. But from this, we'll go ahead and significantly start to reduce your student loan debt in return for your work, for your service. Some of that people, you know, is a volunteer program going on now, but I'm talking about a bigger, a larger program going on. I'm not talking about volunteering and, you know, going and doing volunteer work and cleaning. I'm talking about actually being an employee of the federal government to pay off debt voluntarily. You see, voluntarily, because of course you can't be forced unless you're considered a criminal. to work for the government for free or for pennies on the dollar. However, keep this in mind too. If the government decides to criminalize student loan defaults, that could take things to another level. Right now, it's more of a civil case. It's not the same. It's not looked at the same way taxes are looked at, as in you don't pay your taxes, you can go to jail. But it could be put up there on the same level. But instead of going that far, that could receive a lot of backlash, just think about in the future the idea that you could work off your student loan debt through a federal government job, a part-time job. Some people would look at that positively, some people would look at that negatively, but ultimately a lot of desperate people would take advantage of that opportunity. But if you look at the bigger picture, what does it really mean? What it really means is that you're a slave to the federal government, that you have to work to pay off debt, which you acquired and you accumulated, so that you will be able to get a job and pay your bills and function in normal society without being a criminal. So to avoid being a criminal, you got student loan debts to get a job. The job didn't pay enough to pay back your student loan debt and allow you to still get a home, still raise your family, still eat, and still live the so-called American dream. So in turn, you had to go get another job with the federal government to pay back that portion of your debt. That seems to be a likely scenario of what the future will look like with so many student loan defaults. It doesn't mean that the economy actually goes through a big bust, even though a recession is coming. What it means is that things have changed in terms of the worker market, okay, in terms of how you are considered not so much a slave, but you're considered a worker for the federal government to pay off debts. And that work, just think, even if it's just over the weekend, that can take a lifetime to do. You might have to put in 20 years working on the weekends, or 15 years. They may put a max cap on it. But what will the government get out of that? Free labor. Free labor. Because the money that you would be producing from your labor would have to outweigh what you owe. So don't think for 1 second that if you're working 15 hours a week, that means that, okay, in a year or even in a month, let's say, that reduces your student loan debt by $2,000. That 15 hours a week for a month would likely produce way more than $2,000 or $3,000 a month. It may even produce $15,000, $16,000, $17,000, even $100,000 worth of income for the federal government from your work. So it's an upside down, it's an upside down relationship. You'd be working, but you wouldn't be making as much as you're earning for the government. So in that sense, yeah, it is like slavery, but you're volunteering to do so because you're in a desperate situation. See, this is how government works today. It's not, I'm just going to make you a slave. No, there's a system which puts pressure on you. And then here's an olive branch, which makes me look like a good guy. But ultimately, it's just getting you to work for me for less than what you're worth. Think about that. Do you think that's a possibility in the future? It's something I've seen done in the past. I've read several books where if you study history and study civilizations and you study just whether it's Rome, whether it's Europe, whether it's throughout the world, Asia, you see how people are leveraged and put in positions to be squeezed, and then their reaction to that pressure and what they end up doing are things that they wouldn't normally do in their mind. And I think working for the federal government just to pay off student loan debts, I could ask a lot of people today, they probably would be for it. In fact, let me know in the comment sections, would you do that? Would you work 15 hours a week to pay off your student loan debt only? Not to receive a paycheck, but simply to pay down your debts. And I'm not talking about you paying it off all together in a month or two. I'm talking about even something that may take years, and you're producing a lot more money than you're actually earning when it comes to reducing your student loan debt. Would you do it or would you not do it? Let me know. Talk to you soon.